I think we're up and running.
Hello, everyone.
Good evening, everybody. This is Joystick Jams. I'm Adam, and this is our other host, Noelle, here. And we're happy to come back at you with some more game audio information, talking a little bit about Foley recording today, something that Noelle is the expert in. Far more experienced.
I did a lot.
Far more experienced than I am in my little studio, kind of just winging it. That's for sure.
I think studio winging it's honestly the more fun of Foley. You have to be a lot more creative, and I'll get into a little bit of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I guess starting off with what is Foley? So Foley in general, just think of it as all of the basic but most important sounds in your film, video, any kind of media.
Sure.
You gotta think about Foley. Foley is the clothes rustle, the footsteps, just the daily sounds you hear. Door opens, door closes. That's Foley. It's the most unobserved, but very integral part. You'll notice when it's not there. You are supposed to not notice when it is there if it's great. So
right, it's one of those things. If you get it wrong, you notice it.
Yeah, but if it's perfect, your audience isn't noticing it, which is the point.
Right.
So it's a very unappreciated art from an audience that doesn't understand, but is the most gratifying when you do it right. At least in my world, I love Foley. And getting a car door sound out of something that is not a car door is you're like, oh wow, cool, that all those little parts work together. And that's kind of the biggest thing of Foley, is that sometimes you have all these events that happen in the real world that you don't have actual access to. Like a gun. Not all people have guns in their houses, or they don't have a gun range that they can go record at. So you're finding that a screwdriver, if you a mechanical electric one, you shake it around, it has that same sound you hear in every film ever, and it's just an electric screwdriver. So that's kind of the premise of Foley, is that it is an unnoticed art of creating everyday life.
Sure. There's a guy I follow on TikTok, and I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but he does a bunch of horror sounds, and he's just got this, it looks like junk. Honestly, the stuff that he brings into the studio, and he sets it up on his desk, and he's wearing gloves so that he's trying not to make noise, but it's just this, old pepper grinders that he found in some dude's garage or something, and then, he starts cranking that, and when you put it through the microphone, because it's up close, it sounds like this super creepy ambient kind of noise that you could use for a lot of different things.
Yeah, a lot of collecting. I think that was also probably the funnest part of walking to our Foley room every day, was seeing the collection of items of thrift store finds, old coffee grinders. Hi guys, thanks for joining. Old coffee grinders, every pair of old shoes ever donated went straight to the Foley room, and it was a lot of fun. Seeing all the cool stuff. And then every day was if we had a new kind of prop, was do we make that prop? Do we find that prop? Or what can we utilize from this room to get the right sound?
For sure. So you've done this a whole lot. Where would you begin with a Foley studio? If you were just starting to set this stuff up?
If you're at home and I'm assuming everyone here is on a budget, a small Zoom recorder can get you a long way, and then you just in the quietest closet of your house. The whole point of Foley recording is to make sure there's not any outdoor ambience or environment that you're recording with it. If there is, you should be able to hopefully edit it out. That's kind of the goal, is just to have the pure sound, or pure layers that you're recording to then make into a sound. So just making sure the environment you're in is extremely quiet and having a decent enough mic to also get that way. The Zoom will get you there for cheap. Always recommend a shotgun mic.
Sure.
That is the most directional mic you can get that will cut off any extra sound in your house. So even if there is a bunch of background noise, in my apartment, I got a busy street. I go into the room, not in the busy street, and Well, could even put a blankets. Any sound reduction you can get it.
That's actually what I'm using to speak to you right now, because I can point it at my face all the way over there and still be clear. At least I think I'm clear on the other end. But
I use one too every day.
yeah, it's great.
Unnecessary for your actual like streams, but fun nonetheless. When you get clear audio.
I mean, it's always plugged into my mixer over here anyway, so I might as well use it. But yeah, to your point, like the cleanest sounds you can get, with the lowest noise floor that you can kind of get the noise out of the way, gate it, whatever you need to do, filter it out, so that you just have that raw audio of the one thing that you want to work with. And that's a lot different than like field recording, where you're recording things in their natural environment, right?
Yes. So field recording, you're going out and recording the things you wouldn't be able to get dry, or you wouldn't really want to. So a gunshot, those things are normally field recorded. You're in the range, you're at like a field that would work in. Dangers of field recording, you can't change the environment. So you're like basing your field recording on the weather, on the like you have to like scout out a bunch of places, make sure there's not like a huge highway, there's no constant plane flybys. The amount of sets we've been on where just traffic and air traffic are completely were not workable.
Ruined it.
It's cicadas, birds. You also have to be aware of, if you're field recording, that the sound you're hearing are going to still be accurate to the actual environment of your game or film. Like, let's say for some reason the field recordings that you found or you downloaded or recorded yourself were in UK, and you had some weird UK like cars or ambulances in the background, but this takes place in the US, and like, I don't know. There's like little nuances you have to make sure you're making sure fit in the correct media that you're working on.
Sure.
Recording. While Foley, you're in a secluded space recording just the sound to the picture, and it should be good to go.
Yeah, absolutely. Where do you store all that stuff?
Most people, big studios have really fun Foley pits, and big Foley stages, and even then, they still have storage closets on top of that because of how much props these people just accumulate over the years that they get used to having, like on hand, labeled, whatever. I can show you guys a cool example of the studio I used to work in.
Yeah.
Let me pull up right now. So this is the Foley stage we had. It was beautiful. So as you can see, we used a boom mic. We had 2 different TV screens going, so whoever our Foley artist was positioned, she could, get to work. This is an example for creating the actual prop from the movie, which is a bunch of hands on a string that the characters were shooting guns at. It's a cute movie. We had an actual car door. We had 2. Shoes galore. Swords, buckets, purses, bags, totes, you name it. Shoes. But I think the most important part are these pits. This is basically the biggest thing for Foley artists, and the biggest task, the longest task is footsteps.
Sure.
Getting them on every single surface. Gravel, sand, dirt, grass, water, cement, a creaky staircase. All of those need their own like little pit, and it's a lot to like always have. So having a dedicated space for it is crazy, but obviously it's on your budget. You gotta fake it. You get a sheet pan. You get a carpet. Whatever you can to try to get your own sound.
Yeah, no doubt. I love the big pits that you guys have like just constructed out of like 2x4s from Home Depot there, and filled it with gravel crazy. And everything.
And then like we'd occasionally take out this grass one, fill it with water, so we get like ponds and stuff. Oh, it was always a whole shebang every day.
How'd you get the water back out?
A shop vac. It was a lot of that. Like here, this is one film we had to use like a bunch of water for.
Sure.
So that's pretty much what my job is here, right here, doing the Foley editing and recording. So everything she was doing, I was recording, like, hey, that sounded great. You'd listen back. Like, that could use a little bit more of a thump sound to it. That was too bare. So as of my job, every day was to make sure that the sound that we recorded was accurate, or that we had enough layers to then make it accurate in post.
Sure.
And it's hard, and then you got to build a really good rapport with your artist. That's a big thing. Like, hey, let's try this. You know, it's a whole day of just like trying to get each other like in a good mood to stay creative and power through 2 hours of content of just Foley. And then one thing I didn't bring up that is kind of the first step to like good Foley work, at least in film, I'm sure video games is like this too, is marking it out. We spend at least 4 days before the movie going through every prop we need, when it's needed, every footstep when it's needed, who's doing it, what the character is, because you gotta stay consistent. Especially in like even something as simple as footsteps, you gotta make sure you're wearing the exact same shoe you did for that character as you did 3 days ago before you finish the project. So it's a lot of picture taking, a lot of really making sure you're staying consistent.
How do you keep track of all that data?
That normally Nuendo handles it all really well in the marker tracks. So Pro Tools, I think, is much better with their marker tracks than they were. When I was in college, I hated using markers in Pro Tools. They just look funky and gross. But Nuendo has them laid out really well. And you can we tried to do loop cycles that didn't work as well, caused like a bunch of weird like naming errors. But if you just do like simple marker tracks and just clear them out as you go, it keeps you in order and track.
Gotcha.
But we would literally do it. We'd have it listed as character name, shoe type, surface type of the shoe. So we could just like power through all those same shoes on the same surface at one time without having to constantly change her shoe every scene. Like we try to keep the flow going as smoothly as possible to get as fast as possible, because it's the longest process of the whole like film world was Foley.
Yeah,
it took the longest, I
imagine, and that's like kind of at the end of production too.
Oh yeah.
So now you're on a time crunch because they want to get this thing out.
Oh right? Yeah, so the time crunch is huge. Everyone else is finished before you, but you're also hoping dialogue is also finished because you're also working with the dialogue editors. Like, what did they say from actual set? Sometimes, like, for some reason, the boom artist was recording feet when no one was talking, and you could just utilize it. There's no point in faking it when it's already there.
Sure.
It saves too much time already being sunk into this and too much manpower. There's like 3 people, so you have the person making the marker track before the thing, you have the artist, and you have the editor and the recorder, and they're normally the same person, but it's a lot of manpower into getting Foley ready to go. So
all for something that you don't notice, you know?
All for something that you should not know is there.
Right.
But it should be there.
But it should be there because you'll notice it if it's gone. Like, why isn't that person making a noise while they walk?
I watched a movie the other day and there were no footsteps for the most random scene in the world, and I was like, there's no sound, there's no music going, yet no footsteps.
That's weird.
And then there was a game trailer for something for Sony. Like, Sony, I guess, has like some kind of event, but they uploaded a bunch of like game trailers, and one of them looked so exciting. It was like a PS1 type looking game coming out now. It had like a Resident Evil camera like shape thing. Mm-hmm. It just looked so cool. And then there was no Foley in that entire game trailer. I was like, I don't know what y'all selling, but this is so awkward now. It needs that. So
you lose the immersion.
Oh yeah, 100%. It completely threw me out. I was like so excited seeing that camera angle and like that art style, just to be completely pulled out of it and completely uninterested in the whole game now. It's crazy. No doubt. And I feel like anyone going in blind would also just get that same uneasy feeling of like, not horror uneasy, even though it's a horror game. Just, this is awkward, uneasy. And like horror games, sound is so important. Like, it's important in any game that you play, but I feel like for horror games, you're having to work to build that suspense. And if you don't have the audio there, then it just disconnects you from the whole thing. Like, you have to be immersed in a horror game in order to feel the horror. Yeah. Horror is done best in a silent way. There are times when music like gives you the great build-up moment, and there's times when sound design also does that. But I think the best part of horror is when it's literally just realism.
Yeah.
And that's all in the Foley world, and not having any of that was completely unacceptable for a horror game. And that's also the most fun for Foley is a horror movie. That's when you can be the most creative, because Foley in and of itself is about realism, so you don't ever really get to explore too much, and the props you have are mostly realistic props, and you're trying to be real.
Right.
In horror, there's the suspension of disbelief stuff, the bone breaks, the carrot breaks. I say carrots because we use carrots and celery and all the fun stuff to actually make those sounds, because you can't really, break your own bone just for the sounds.
That's dedication.
Yeah, no, that'd be crazy. I'm sure someone's done it. But no, so the horror is so much fun for a Foley artist, and for them not to have done it was insane.
Yeah, that's really bananas to me that they wouldn't have put that in. Could you not rub on the microphone, please?
Oh, no, that's the whole kitty's job. My kitty is still dead asleep in my lap right now, so I'm lucky.
He was bothering me earlier while I was composing music. He kept stepping on the multi-pad controller. And I gotta...
He's like, I can help.
I gotta ask you later on, don't let me forget, because I just bought Nuendo, and I want to migrate from Ableton to Nuendo for that reason, because Nuendo is so good at handling the sound effects stuff, as well as, and it has the Game Connect, which also is nice because it will integrate with Wise. But I'm kind of lost. I've never used it before, so I'm used to the Ableton workflow.
Very intimidating to look at, because I started at this company, no Nuendo training at all, just Pro Tools, and so it looks so different. But once you actually start getting into it, it flows. It flows really nice, really easy to get into. I can send you a list of good key commands too that make it sounds better. That's a big little tip. Get your key commands set and going, because they make your life 1,000 times easier.
Yeah, so the thing is, I bought this keyboard that has all the key commands on it for Ableton Live, and now I don't want to use it. So I'm going to go back to the website and see if they have one for Nuendo.
Mm-hmm.
They might. I don't know if they do or not. They might just have, Pro Tools and some of that.
I think Nuendo also has a preset in there that has the key commands for other DAWs, as presets.
Oh, that would be dangerous.
So you could set it to Pro Tools, and it's the same key commands as basic Pro Tools.
That would be dangerous. I'll have to go in and look at that. I have not gone through. There are so many settings in Nuendo.
It's very make it your own.
It's overwhelming. So I gotta hop on and get some tutorials under my belt, but I've been busy with other projects, so I haven't touched it much.
Record those. We should do that for later on.
So, all right. So, what else can you tell us about Foley here? Because you've got a lot of stuff there on your page there.
Yeah. So there's more examples of props. So many props.
I love the just
whole kitchenette.
I love the just random banana in the background.
Oh, we used that so
banana.
many times. An awkward amount of times we have use for that. We had a film that was Foley in the summer. It was a summertime beach movie, and there was 8 floaties. We used that one multiple times. It's good for random layering, because it has a good squeak to it when you it's weird the amount of uses we got.
I love that, because you can just go out and buy something, just let your inner child sing and be like, oh, here's this ridiculous 10-foot inflatable swan. Let's buy that and see what kind of sounds we can make with it.
Also, breaking or buying things just to break them is a very common Foley thing. Glass.
Yeah.
You buy it just to shatter it in as many ways as you can, and record it in as many different ways as you can, so you can keep reusing that sound. That's another good thing of Foley, is you're also building your own library as you're doing it.
Yeah, for sure.
You can always just take what you recorded and put it into your own little spaces. These are all these types of footsteps for this kind of character, and give its own attributes and stuff. And now you have a cute little footstep library going without having to constantly have to re-record. So Foley also gives you the perk that you're pretty much making a library as you're going on.
Not worrying about any kind of licensing or anything like that, because you recorded it yourself.
It's all you, baby. Another thing. So let's say you're just starting out and you don't have access at all, good mics or a quiet room. There is an instrument that you can get that works like on any MIDI controller for not that much money. If you're starting out, it's still kind of pricey, but not super pricey. Is this Foley art instrument, and it comes preloaded with like so many different types of shoes on so many different types of surfaces, and you can like literally change so much of it, like the mic perspective of like the shoe. So like you can just do it to the film or a video game you're working on, just play with it. It's crazy. I love it. You know, like slow walk, fast walk, jump, scuff is my favorite.
And this is a Contact library, and Contact is free
Yes.
if you download it from Native Instruments. The libraries cost money, and I have a lot of the libraries from Native Instruments for just like music. But this is really cool because I don't have any samplers that are just Foley sounds.
It's just Foley sounds. It's so fun. And if you ever get to the point where like, oh, that I just makes my life easier, without having to, you know, constantly go through the whole process of Foley recording, you should invest even more so in like the ultimate one. So this one's even more crazy. So instead of just like shoes on surfaces, this one also gives you shoes, surfaces, cloth, bags. So like your jacket swishes, your everything. It's absolutely insane. Same thing. You can mix two different types of shoes too if you're not getting the exact sound you want. So like let's say the guy just needs to sound like thicker, you add boots, and then the dress shoes. It's crazy the amount of stuff you get in the ultimate one. I had so much fun messing with this every day, and it did speed up a lot of game jams I worked on was just having this ready to go. And then even then, if you don't like just the sound of that, you could take these that you synced to picture, then add your own Foley layers on top of that. So like, let's say it's like a guy in a suit of armor. You have your bass step on certain type of gravel or whatever, and then you add metal. Like the sounds of metal clanking on top of it.
Sure. So I got to ask, how big is that sample library, the ultimate one? How many gigabytes of files is it?
Let's see if we can find that on there.
I know some of the Contact libraries I have are like 30 gigabytes worth of files. It's crazy.
I could not tell you, but I'm sure it's a shit ton. There's 72,000 samples.
That's a lot of samples.
And there's a shit ton in there. At least 5 gigabytes of free drive space.
That'll do it.
Yep.
When you're talking about, you know, 72,500 files, and you're like, oh, 5 gigabytes isn't that much, but you know these files are only, you know, a fraction of a second or a second long.
And then it's up to you how you're playing it and how you're adjusting it. That gives you all the
right
fun stuff.
So you've done a lot of this in film. Have you done much of this Foley work in games already?
Yes. So especially like in college, you know, I didn't have access to be buying a bunch of sound effects libraries to try to, you know, get my sounds working together.
Yeah, for sure.
So it was a lot of me just like messing around with things I already had at my house or stuff I got from Goodwill to make cute little things. So like all the things I've worked on have like have a mix of sound effects. Sorry, ambulance. I live in Chicago. That's not fun every time. But game jams, I did a lot of Foley. There's a cute one. I don't really have many videos from it, sadly, but I do have like it was this little jelly guy, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you'll be able to hear it.
A little bit.
I don't know if I can hear. Really quiet because I mix too fucking quiet. That's my biggest downfall as a sound editor. But I did a bunch of cute little sounds for him, and like him like walking and jumping and stuff. So where's like a good cycle one? Where are we at? So like that would be him jumping and walking. Like go like that when he walks.
And you recorded these yourself?
Yeah, I recorded it entirely myself with like little jelly slimes.
Nice.
I had laying around, and then to get the extra thump, I used Play-Doh as like the thump sound layer, and then he seemed really like watery, so I literally just took a water bottle, added extra sloshing as a layer, but like really quiet, and then it was just a lot of layering of little random things to really get that sound together.
That's really like important for sound effects, I think, in general, is to remember that you can layer different sounds together to get all of the different qualities that you're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
And like talking to some people, you see them online, the people that don't want to pay artists for their work, but you go in there and you say, okay, well, it's going to be 50, 60, $100 per sound effect that I send you. And they're like, well, that's insane. It's a 2-second sound effect, or it's a 1-second sound effect. But no, I spent an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours doing all the recording and layering and mixing it together and EQing the parts of the different sounds out that I didn't want and all of that stuff. Like, it takes a lot of craftsmanship and work. So
Definitely never just a one-step process, and almost never will you get the sound that you're actually looking for just in one layer at one time. It's just not going to happen. And we're also human. We'll make mistakes. So even if like it is something as simple as a footstep to a picture, you're not going to land it every time. It's still going to take all the extra editing and re-recording. Like, it's never just a one-step process. That's not the point of it. That's kind of what makes it more fun too, is how much more adventuring you have to do to get to the end result that you're hoping for.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that the when you're looking at programmers or game designers or something like that, you expect them to iterate. And okay, well, here's a bug, I'm going to fix that. Okay, now here's another bug, I'm going to fix that. You kind of expect that out of them, but like the vision of like just musicians or sound artists in general is like, oh, they just nail it every time because that's what you see on MTV is just them nailing it. And that's not really how it works. It takes a lot of iteration and a lot of trial and error and a lot of work to get even the simplest stuff.
Musicians will most likely have an auto-tune layer. Things just happen.
Right.
And we just got better in technology where we can just keep making even our worst files work. Because, money and time are valuable, and it's just kind of how it got to be. Not to say there's not also the skill involved of attempting to get it in the shortest amount of time also is crazy.
Sure.
You also have deadlines. Games are known for their crunch times. You can't be messing around. You're there to get what you need to get as fast as you can get it.
That's another one.
The game.
Audio is almost always at the end of the production cycle. It is for games too.
Yeah, no. We're left to the dust. We're like, hey, can you please send us that animation you finished, please, so I can attempt to get something for it. But just because that's done doesn't mean it's done.
And it's like one of those things too, like where you're like, okay, I got these sounds, I know what this character is wearing, and then you come back and they're like, yeah, we changed this animation, and then you're like, oh well, I gotta redo all of those. So
it is my biggest pet peeve. From any director in any media, we just changed that around just a little bit. And you're like, what do you mean you changed it around a bit? And they would have just like flipped complete frames around, and you're like, what are you? That isn't just a little fix for me. That is a day's worth of me re-editing to that picture. I don't.
Right.
You can't just do that.
You can't just drop that on me at the last minute and expect it to be done in 10 minutes. Like, that's not how that works.
And they really do think it's just like, well, the sounds are there, and you're like, no, but it's synced and it's perfect, it's perfected, and it worked at this part of the music because it worked at that part of the music, and now it's not with that part of the music anymore because you changed everything around. They never think of how huge the effect of a simple video edit or animation edit is to the sound person. They're like, oh, it's just a quick fix.
It's not a quick fix. It's never a quick fix.
It was for you.
It was for you. You got to flip it around by hitting a button on your keyboard or whatever and flip the audio or the video file or whatever you did with it. But for me, that's I got to go in and I got to, like in a game, I got to go in, and depending on how involved you are with it, I got to go in and now I got to animate to the different keyframes and set all that up. And okay, well, you change the size of the character, so now all the sounds sound wrong because it sound too heavy or whatever. And so it's a lot of redoing work if they don't stick to the vision.
I'm just going to 8 frames. No biggie. Big biggie.
Biggie. Real biggie.
And it's so funny.
One of the things that I think, and I don't know if this falls under Foley or not, but it is really useful for recording in the studio and getting kind of sound effects is just using your mouth too.
Fun example of that. I did that. Use it. You have like a whole instrument right here.
One that you've been practicing your whole life.
Yeah, it's there. The kissing sounds you hear on TV is someone kissing their hand on a mic. It is not what was recorded on set. None of those exist. It was all someone having to get real close to a microphone and get real intimate.
Making out with themselves.
It's silly, the little things you have to do to get it done right. That's one of them. I have a cute little like game. I think you probably did this too, since you also did the Berkeley stuff.
I did. I think I saw it on your
UI
website.
Sound. Yeah. My website is not up yet, but it will get there. Nope, that did not do that. What I was wanting to do. Sorry. I want the whole screen to share, please. Discord does not make things easy sometimes. Let it be known. Okay. Where's it at? So like this cute little video game was all done with just me recording mouse sounds. It's just the UI sounds done with mouth. If you can hear it. Little poppy sounds. So there was a lot of layering, a lot of like distorting. It got on, that keeps going on, but that was the premise. And the whole reason that worked for that one specifically was that it was like eating cooking game. So like why wouldn't it involve mouth sounds?
Yeah, I did the same exercise. I think I included the music with my but yeah, it was a fun exercise to do, if nothing else. And if you're going out to record some audio, give it a shot and just kind of have fun. You know, you had fun making fart noises with your mouth when you were a kid. It can be fun as an adult too.
You know? Like, it's never just the sound you make either. Like, you can do so much with it, with how much, like, whatever plugin you have. You can reverb it out, you can duplicate it, turn it around. Like, reversing a sound that you record can give you so many different, like, fun iterations or thoughts of, like, how this could be used. It's really just about being creative at that point, from taking things that you record in Foley to elevate it just a little bit more.
Yeah, it's a great excuse to use the plugins that you bought that you don't really use on anything else. And as as a musician, I have a lot of stuff that I never really touch because I see it on an advertisement and I'm like, ooh, you know, I need that, and then it sits in my VST folder. Well, that's a great opportunity to just start slapping stuff on there that you don't even know what it does. And I got a lot of stuff I don't know what it does. It's like, you know, got some esoteric name like the Thundernator or something. Okay, what does that do? You find out.
Plugin names. I think that's the funniest part of plugins, is just what people just like. And then there's times where you're looking at it and you still can't process any of what it's doing, but it comes up with the funnest sound as end result because you were just fucking around in it.
Yeah, like, I don't know what this is doing right now. Let me crank it up to 11. Okay, it's doing something. I'm not really sure what, but it's intense now. So
it just adds to, hey, you record this cool ambient-y sound now, and now that's also in your library. All your little iterations that you render out, fucking around with your plugins.
Yeah, save your stuff. That's a big thing.
It.
Save your stuff. I need to be better about that. I'm really actually terrible about that. Because I'll do a project and then I won't like export any of the individual stuff and I'll just like shelve it and leave it alone. But like, go save your stuff. Save your presets for your instruments. If you're a musician, go save your all your little different sounds that you've made and find some kind of storage device to throw it all on and try to index it as best you can. Find a file naming convention that works for you and
I was about to get into that. That's the biggest thing. When you're Foley editing, the best thing you do is just be organized like that and have those file names just going. So in the window, when you have a marker name, you can set that your records to the marker name. So you don't even have to go back and like rename it or reiterate it. You already have it going.
That's nice.
And then it all saves, and then you eventually mix it down. I'm showing you this. So, like, this is kind of like how some of my sound effects end up finishing after I'm done. It's like examples of like how to get your variations going and keeping it still organized, and then that's so much easier to then put in like your own little sound effects folders later. So this isn't even a sound effects folder. This is just how I'm mixing it down, just blank. And then also, it's not even just for you. Whoever you're delivering your files to needs to have it in the same exact naming convention that they have for their animation anyway.
Yeah, so, absolutely.
It should be happening from the get-go. If it's not, it's easy to fix, but
depending on
puts you in a better habit.
Depending on which engine you're using, there's usually like some suggested file naming conventions. Or if it's like an in-house thing, there's definitely going to be a GDD, a game design document with that information and on what the file naming conventions are expected to be. So just get in the habit of using it, and when you find one that you really like I have, being a musician, I have both music and sound effects files. So that's what I mark them as first. That's the first thing before the underscore is this music or is it sound effects? And then when I get into my Wise project or whatever, and I'm looking through stuff, I can find all the music files and I can find all the sound effects files. Now I'll usually use some kind of folder structure to break things down a little bit further so that they're easier to find. But if nothing else, like I can use the file name and still find what I'm looking for pretty easily. So
being organized and having everything where it should be is key.
I think that's been one of the hardest things for me, is trying to like find a system that keeps me organized without it becoming a mess. I'm still not sure I've got it.
I mess it up too. Like even with Nuendo and it giving it to me kind of easy, with my recordings, I still go back and have to redo a whole section. Also, there's a really cool batch rename option in Nuendo that I appreciate more than anything else in the world that I couldn't find in Pro Tools, which does exist. I found it eventually, but in my college times, I never found the button. So,
yeah, I got to get into the Nuendo thing. I'm working on a project with you guys, and I'm going to do it all in Ableton because that's what I'm used to. But I think the next project we work on together, I'm gonna finally migrate. This project has been not to get off topic, but this project has been a lot of learning like interactive music systems and generative music systems. So that's kind of been my learning topic for this project. But I think the next one's going to be, let's just learn Nuendo and figure that out. So
I'm also down to learn any integration. I'm still absolutely at the lowest level of that. So it's hard. I think it's the hardest part of it. Like you can be comfortable like making the music and making the sounds, but then getting it to work in Engine is probably the most frustrating part.
I don't know if it's it can be frustrating. It's a lot of bug hunting and troubleshooting. But there are multiple layers to that. Like you're going to need somebody who's going to be able to code the integration. And depending on what you're using, like I've just learned Unreal Engine for the first time. And so learning blueprints in Unreal Engine has been kind of a trip because it's easier than trying to script in C#, but it's all visual. And I've worked with visual programming languages before in Cycling 74's Max. And the problem with visual programming languages versus scripting languages is that there's a node for everything. And so there are thousands of them, and you have to know which one you're looking for. So it's literally just learning vocabulary, and it takes a long time. But I did both an integration directly into Unreal Engine, and I did an integration with this project in Wise, which actually is pretty easy to do because Unreal Engine and Wise work natively together. They kind of have their own integrations and SDKs that are specific to each other. So they talk to each other really nicely. And so that's what I recommended to the group that I'm working with right now, is that we do the Wise integration. And if we ever go to release the game, it'll cost more money, but I can do a lot more with it and not have to code it all, which I won't know how to do anyways. So it just kind of depends on how many layers of separation you have between you and the code, I think. If you're having to code it yourself, it's a nightmare. That's not what I went to school for.
I think that's the hardest part to explain. Like, I know how to make this.
Right.
Getting into coding is another bandwagon.
But
I failed my coding class.
But if you can get somebody to do like even the general coding and do a Wise integration, then Wise is just, I mean, it's like learning Nuendo. It's like learning a DAW. It works differently and it's built for a different purpose, but it's more or less the same kind of system where you decide which sounds play when you want them to play. And then it's just communicating to the programmer, like, this is the information I need to send back to Wise. And they have all the tools. Wise gives them in the SDK all the tools they need to send that information to Wise. So it becomes a whole lot easier to use the middleware than it is to try and code it by hand. Now that might be different in like custom game engines where somebody's made their own engine and they have specific audio goals in mind. But if you're just in a game jam or something like that and you guys want to throw something together real fast, let me do the Wise integration because I can work in Wise faster than I can work on C#.
For sure.
So
We're getting close to the end of the hour, so I kind of want to just like wrap up a little bit.
sure.
If you're more interested in the extra like Foley stuff, there's so much on the internet of other Foley artists who love sharing their art form, because it is an art form because of how many steps are involved in it, and just there's so many people like showing the process of how they do it on like a horror movie versus how they do it in like a regular movie and what kind of props they use on a daily basis. So just like don't like just feel free to just dive into like what YouTube has to offer if you just type in Foley examples. Like there's a plethora of famous artists out there that are giving out content like that, showing you how they do it on a daily basis. And it's a lot of fun watching that part of like the behind the scenes of like the little things you don't notice that someone spent a lot of time getting you to not notice that it's there.
Right. But and watch some of those videos just for fun because it's really interesting stuff. Like to watch the way that some of these sounds are made, and then you won't hear, like if you're watching a movie, you won't hear it the same. You'll start paying attention to those sound effects, and you'll be like, I should be ignoring this, but now I'm hearing these footsteps, and I know this was some dude in a studio with these cowboy boots that he put on in a gravel pit.
Yeah. Or, shoes that obviously did not fit the person, and they're wearing high heels in awkward positions.
Right.
It's fun. And then there's another cute thing about the Foley room. That the shoes didn't really fit her because they're all donations. But to get her, because she was a very tiny lady, to get her to sound like a beef burly man, we had the thickest boots, and she had to put so much weight into all her steps just to sound like a normal, typical dude. And it's crazy, just how much effort she had to put in to sound like different people.
Yeah, I have to give her a couple kettlebells or something to make her heavier.
It was fun. We did sandbags occasionally. Also a good prop just to have around. Keep sandbags around. Good thuds. Good thonks. Extra weights. Anything.
And sand whenever you need it.
Mm-hmm. But I think that's about all I had to really say. You have anything else to add?
I don't think so. It was a great to talk to you about that. Like I said, you're the expert on this stuff, and it was really interesting to hear what you had to say about it.
Very fun, very, very unappreciated art.
For sure. Well, I think that about wraps us up. Anything else?
I think we're good.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure. As always, you can reach us at joystickjams@gmail.com. Or you can always send us a message on social media, and we look forward to seeing you all next time.
Bye, everyone.
Good night.